You better stop!
All right, folks, time for our Crime Time segment here on Closing Arguments. Let's introduce tonight's guest. Joining us, former police officer Lance LaRusso. Lance has over a decade of experience in law enforcement. He has trained civilians, officers, and supervisors as a firearms and defense tactics instructor, and he's certified in hostage negotiation. Also with us, retired Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Sergeant Dorsey started with the LAPD in 1980. She worked in patrol and specialized units, including gangs, and she's also the author of Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate. Sergeant Dorsey, Lance, great to have you both here. I want to begin because we're in the midst of jury selection during the Derek Chauvin trial for the death of George Floyd. And some issues about policing came up during the questioning. I'd like to get your thoughts on it. Let's begin with something that was said by juror number 8.
It seems to me that you have a belief that people of color are treated differently by the system than people who are not of color.
No, I mean, I think there can be or there is racism demonstrated, but I think that the system itself would treat people equally, whether the judge or the jury or whatever. Racism can come into place there, but the system, I would say no. I don't feel that the system is unequal.
And you also have some stronger opinions about Blue Lives Matter as well.
Yes.
And those are very favorable opinions, right?
Yes.
All right, Sergeant Dorsey, do police treat people equally?
Well, listen, I would say no, being a person of color. And we've seen certainly examples of that time and time again, how officers will feign fear and inhuman strength when they're dealing with a black person and converse that with an armed white individual, and they do everything but lay them down and tickle them gently. So, yeah, they do treat folks differently. Not all, but some.
Lance, what do you think?
Very interesting comment. The bottom line is, over and over again, studies have proven that, especially when it comes to the use of deadly force, law enforcement officers do not disproportionately use force against people of color. It's been disproved by the National Academy of Sciences. It's been disproved by Harvard University professor Ronald Fryer. It's been disproved by Heather McDonald. We keep seeing this statement coming over and over again with this hyperbole of everything but lay them down and tickle them. I mean, this is what's causing people to leave the law enforcement profession and cause people to be disproportionately afraid of the officer at the other end of a 911 call. Officers are answering 911 calls not knowing who is in need of help, and they're still rushing and putting their lives at risk for people of other races.
Well, let's compare and contrast that, because we've got some examples that we can take a look at. How about, I believe his name is Adam Freen, white man who had killed several federal officers, went out on a lam for several days, was leaving AK-47s like breadcrumbs for them to pick up as they pursued him. And guess what? He was taken into custody. How? Without incident. Let's look at how officers just recently here in California dealt with a black man accused of what? Jaywalking. And because of that, this black man is dead. And so he can quote whomever he wants. But we have video evidence, names of real live white folks, Dylan Roof, given a hamburger after he shot up 9 black people in a church, and others who are treated very differently.
Lance, I'll give you the last word.
You know, we hear this over and over and over again, and quite frankly, it gets old. The officers taking people into custody have to base the use of force they have on the reactions of the person they're taking into custody. Irrespective of their race, if the people submit to the officer's authority, they're taken into custody without incident.
All right, I want to play something from juror number 17 today. Let's take a listen.
For what I know, the NPD has a history of corruption and just I just hear that there's a lot of bad cops in the MPD. I just don't trust. I don't really trust law enforcement like that. I just feel a little bit intimidated when they come around.
Lance, what struck me about this prospective juror, he was very young. He was 19 years old. Is there a lack of trust that is growing these days between police officers and younger folks? And taking race out of the equation, just let's talk about young people and police and that level of trust. Do you see a problem?
I think there definitely is a growing distrust, and you can't blame them. I mean, they're bombarded every way till Sunday on social media that officers are doing things that they're not in fact doing. And quite frankly, I think he was pretty courageous. He sounded young. I didn't know he's 19 years old, but to speak up like that and be very frank in a group of strangers, it's heartbreaking to hear from somebody who wore a badge and somebody who represents a lot of officers. It's heartbreaking to hear, but you can't help but have those opinions. You are bombarded every day with lies about law enforcement.
So can I respond to that, Vinnie, please?
Absolutely.
We are not bombarded with images on television that shape our opinion. What happens is we experience this real time, real life. And so that's the basis for which many Black folks have to call on. And while I'm in law enforcement, trust me when I tell you, when I walk out of my house in this suit that I wear, everybody doesn't know that I used to be a sergeant on the Los Angeles Police Department. And so I, too, have been a victim of racial profiling. I've been stopped when I've done nothing wrong. And it's not until an officer finds out exactly who I am that things change. And so our real life experiences are the basis for which this young man has grown up, probably seeing family members being treated unfairly. And now he, too, is afraid. He probably knows someone who has lost their life at the hands of an errant officer. So it's not just stuff we see on TV that we just pull out of the air and from our nether regions that makes us feel frightful of police.
All right. I appreciate both of you being very frank tonight. I think it's an important discussion to have. Let's get to our next story and continue this analysis. This comes from the Muskogee Police Department in Oklahoma. Police chasing teen runaways.
Sure, when I get my unit, I'll start this one out. Front tire blocked up. Eastbound on the wrong way.
You're gonna get tased. Shots fired! Shots fired! White female has a gun. Shots fired.
Hey, are you all right?
I'm good, I'm good.
You get hit?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Get on the ground now!
Got a gun! Slow down! You better stop!
Stop!
Drop the weapon! Drop it! Slow down. You better stop!
Sir, stop!
Stop! Stop! Stop!
Stop and get on the ground! Lay down! Thank God. Stop and get on the ground!
Incredibly tragic. The teenage girl who fired at police was shot and killed. The teenage boy who seemed to get away apparently died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And the question I have tonight, could this have been handled any differently? This was a difficult situation. Lance?
You know, I kind of want to know why they were running. It's a horrible situation. I think one of the things that this points out is the body cameras are not going to tell you the full story. Clearly, the officer is choosing a less than lethal option to just take someone into custody and almost loses his life when somebody shoots at him. But you can't see that on the camera. You can see at that one point you're showing right now where the officer is actually faced with that person and hesitates and doesn't use deadly force because it wasn't completely clear. So, you know, it's a very sad situation. And again, we see the use of force by the suspects dictating the level of force used by the officers.
Sergeant Dorsey?
Yeah, the officers are being proactive in this case, and I don't know the backstory. I don't know why these individuals are runaways. I don't know what they're running away from. But the moment a person presents a handgun and fires at an officer, then officers are justified to return the use of deadly force. And so I'm not certain why they didn't do that sooner. When this person faced that officer very briefly, I don't know why they continued to yell, "Stop, get down, lay down," when this person has demonstrated that they're trying to evade and flee. So maybe there's something in their policies and procedures that makes them think they can't shoot at somebody who's shooting at them. But it's very unfortunate that it turned out this way. Sadly, 2 young people lost their lives. Luckily, no officers were injured.
All right. Our experts will stay with us. We've got more Crime Time straight ahead, plus this.
Day one of jury selection in the death of George Floyd murder trial, and prosecutors accuse the defense of striking jurors based upon their race. We take a closer look with our legal think tank. And prosecutors are armed with arguably one of the most powerful pieces of evidence ever brought into a criminal courtroom. But is it enough? Tonight's 13th juror question: do you think the video of George Floyd tells the whole story? Go to our Facebook pages and tell us what you think.
Why?
Welcome back to our Crime Time segment. Let's take a look at our next story. It comes to us from the NYPD. Police met with gunfire.
Oh, officers!
What's going on? Did you call?
Yeah, I gave you a call.
What's going on?
I'm fed up with all oh, wake up, sister.
What's going on?
What happened, sister? You got some misunderstanding, man. Make sure you got your shirt on. You know the guys playing on mask. That's stupid, right?
You called?
Huh? Yo, this phone hurt.
Oh, yo, put the gun down.
Put that gun down.
Incredibly dramatic. How does training come into play here in a situation like this? Sergeant Dorsey, I'll begin with you.
Well, listen, your training certainly plays a part in it, and I think that's why the officers initially were reluctant to advance up the stairs. That guy was acting what we would call very hinky, right? Something was up. The way he was talking to the officers, he said he called, he wouldn't show his hands. We're taught and trained, hands will kill you. And so I think it would have been better had the officers not tried to advance and call him downstairs.
Lance LaRusso, I mean, this demonstrates just how dangerous things can get very quickly.
All of those shots were fired in about 7 seconds. Just to give you an idea of how quickly that whole thing happened. You know, the suspect is covering his face at one point. It seems like he may be suffering some sort of a mental breakdown. I mean, you can hear he's not making a whole lot of sense. It sounds like the officers were going up there to try to help him. They're reaching out. You can see their body language. They're trying to reach out to him quietly. They're keeping their voices down. They're trying to inquire. And it just tells you how dangerous police work is. That's one of the most dangerous things you can do is approach somebody up on an elevated position like that. And he was determined to kill a cop that day. It's clear.
Yeah, Sergeant Dorsey, we only have about 10 seconds here, but the other part that struck me was it seems he made the call to bring police there.
Right, and so I don't know if mental illness played a part because he may have very well been trying to set the officers up to do what he started off doing, which was ambush them.
All right, Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, Lance LaRusso, always great to have you both on the program. Appreciate your passion and your honesty tonight. Please come back soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks.